This episode is brought to you by Fuli Gemstones. You're at the kitchen table. Are you fighting for space? Are you collaborating? Are you showing each other what you're working on at that moment?
All of those things occur at different times depending on our mood and how cranky one of us is.
She's speaking of me in code, by the way.
Like every wife.
She's very seldom cranky. I'm very often cranky.
I'm Carol Woolton, the voice of jewellery. Welcome to If Jewels Could Talk. I'm an author and broadcaster, and the woman who initiated the role of jewellery editor at magazines like Tatler and Vogue. This is a podcast for everyone, for people who do like jewellery, for people who don't realise they like jewellery, and anyone intrigued by fascinating facts, new ideas, and forgotten histories. So join me as I tell sparkly tales and meet all sorts of people, delving into 4 centuries of jewellery culture, and investigate what's happening now. I have as my guests David and Sybil Yurman, or Sybil and David Yurman, whichever way round. They are a true partnership, and they are the owners of the American jewellery company of the same name. So, Sybil and David, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's our pleasure.
Yeah, my pleasure as well.
Over the years, so many people have talked and said to me, jewellery is wearable art. But in your 2 cases, it really is wearable art. I mean, Sybil is an artist, creator, and businesswoman. David is a sculptor of 3-dimensional objects. And together, you have redefined the rules of crafting jewellery. And because you've done it together, and we're here today to talk about your new book, which is a sort of combined memoir, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Absolutely, yeah, it is.
Yeah, combined memoir and a collaboration all about your partnership and your working life together, which is sort of inextricably linked to the work. So I thought, well, to understand your creative lives, can we go kind of back to the beginning?
Yes.
And understand what you were both doing when you met, because you were kind of both tearaways, weren't you, at the time?
What's the word you used?
Tearaway.
Oh,
were you a tearaway?
I don't know that.
I like the sound. I want to be one.
I don't know what a
You both were.
Is that like a runaway renegade?
Exactly.
Oppositional
very,
to the
very naughty, sort of.
Leader of the counterculture in her own way.
Exactly. So, Sybil, what were you up to?
Naughtiness. I don't know where you would like me to start.
Well, you ran away from home. You were like a teenage runaway, weren't you?
I wouldn't put it like that. I really had purpose. I wasn't a random kind of runaway. I had planned it for quite a while. And my planning was around going to the Museum of Modern Art, seeing the Monet paintings there and saying, I know what this person's doing. They're painting the feeling. They're not painting the exact water lilies. I could paint a feeling as well. I think I'll go home and do that. My father bought me paints, and I would paint anyone in the neighborhood a painting for $25, $35, or $50. And they just had to buy me the paint colors they wanted me to use. And I would paint my feelings of the day, looking at whatever objects I wanted to look at. And this was going to afford me the money to leave home. I wasn't running away, I was leaving, because I had some place to go at 16 years of age. I started saving my money when I was about 15 or so. And I wanted to live in California, and I wanted to swim in the ocean while the sun set, which, of course, when I finally got to California, the water was so cold, and it was dotted with oil wells, and that was not something I was ever going to do. But it was one of my few aspirational dreams. And I just had another idea of where I wanted to live and the people I wanted to spend time with. So I was living in Greenwich Village, and I'm curious about these interesting looking people that my father had taken me to see a few months earlier. He took me to jewelry stores where everything was handmade. I went to Washington Square Park. A young man sat down next to me. He said, "What's your name?" And I said, "Sybil." And he said, "Wow, someone named you after the Delphic oracles? That's pretty cool." So I ended up meeting Allen Ginsberg and Peter Orlovsky. I went to jazz clubs. I met Art Blakey and Horace Silver. I became quite involved in the jazz music world and the literary scene.
So they were all hanging down in Greenwich Village at the time.
Exactly. So I was just on the periphery of it as a very young girl.
And what were you all doing? Were you all in clubs at night?
Well, we used to go to a place called the Dom and dance to the Beatles and watch Allen Ginsberg throw himself around the room because he didn't really have that kind of rhythm to him. Also, there were coffee houses where you went to listen to poetry readings. And then there were people's homes where you went and took mescaline that you could buy for 25 cents a capsule.
Just in the process of pursuing your art.
Precisely. I didn't know what it was, but I was interested because they told me it was mind-altering, and I definitely, coming from the Bronx, I needed a little mind-altering. I knew I was entering into a new world of ease and grace, and I was very intrigued and was looking for a new place and new people to meet. I left school at 16 because I really just wanted to spend my time reading and painting. So that was the very beginning.
And did you share a lot of artistic experiences with this group?
Oh, absolutely.
Did it alter your mind? Did you come out with a different outlook?
Oh, yeah. I did. Mm-hmm. I did. There was very little judgment, very little measuring. It had an ease to it. And the idea of let be, and it was the beginning of Zen Buddhism. So there was a tranquility and an acceptance and a lack of real measurement of where you were on a strata. Mm-hmm. It was a cultural revolution going on, just starting at the time. So the idea of fitting into a status quo was disappearing.
Did you feel you were the new generation breaking through boundaries and formal living?
I didn't know that it was new. I just knew that by going to this new environment, this is what I incurred. These are the people that I met. I just assumed they'd always been there. I had just found them. So
that's an interesting way of looking at it, yes.
It was a very different way. And then it was about going to San Francisco.
What were the hippies at the time?
No, it was before the hippies because it was really, Ginsberg was not a hippie. And that whole crowd, they were not hippies. They were beat poets. They were beatniks, is what they got referred to, jazz heads as well. And San Francisco was a place that one gravitated toward, and the Monterey Jazz Festival at that time as well. So there I was, working in a cafe in a coffee house in Greenwich Village, and went to San Francisco. A friend said, come to San Francisco, put up a note at City Lights bookstore, and I'll find you. And I said, well, okay, that sounds great. I didn't know what that really meant, but I did it. And a few days later, I was found, and I needed a place to live. And I was taken by my friend to a house called the Hyphen House. And the Hyphen House was, I didn't realize really where I was being taken, but it was a house of poets and writers and musicians. And it was only men that lived there. And he said, women don't live here, but because you're so young, maybe they'll let you stay and you can take care of the house. And so...
How old were you, Sybil, at that point?
I was 16 and a half, maybe just 17.
So you'd had all those experiences already?
Yeah. There was a room I could live in that Lou Welsh, the writer, was not there, and I could stay there. As he's showing me the house, there's a man on the kitchen floor. He said, the kitchen, there's where everything is, but who's the man on the kitchen floor? What's he doing? He said, do not wake him up. It's Jack Kerouac. So that was my introduction to the next stage of a creative existence in San Francisco.
And so now, David, tell us what you were doing while Sybil was doing that.
So we're thinking this is what, 1957, 8, 9?
59.
Yeah.
59. So that would be a year before I would have graduated from high school.
And we're both the same age.
Yeah. And in 1959, I think in the summer of 58, I went out to Eugene, Oregon, to work at a lumber mill, which my father, he got somehow involved with this partnership. And they said, well, David, would you like to go? I never went to camp and always worked in the summer. And they said, would you like to go and visit this lumber mill in Eugene, Oregon? I said, I've never been on an airplane. I said, yeah, let's do it. So I went out And I also went out to run. I was a miler, and I had some really nationally recognized times. And there was this, Haywood Field, and the number one. And actually, it was a Brit who ran the first sub 4 minute mile.
Yeah, Roger Bannister.
Roger Bannister, and the next to break Roger Bannister's by a second was Darrell Burleson, who was from Eugene, Oregon. And I went out there and I asked the coach if it would be okay. And he said, Tuesday through Fridays, come on out, bring your spikes. Gave some dates, and anytime after 3, and cools down a bit then. And I did. And I ran with Darrell Burleson. And I said, oh, my God. And it's sort of like Forrest Gump. My life is always somehow I find myself in the midst of things, and I don't know how did I even get. Well, this one I knew. I wrote him a letter, and I ran with him, and it was like I ran about 3/4 of the mile right next to him. I said, you know what? I think I can make the Olympics this year. And then as we came around to the stretch of the last quarter, it was like Roger the Rabbit, and it was just like boing, he just disappeared. He looked at me, he said, you want to kick? You do the last bit on the straightaway, you kick, you just give it everything you have. And I said, yeah, let's do it. And it was like, he was gone. He just disappeared.
So the Olympic dreams went out the window.
Very quickly. I said, I think I'm getting over my skis. I didn't say that. It wasn't the expression. I said, I think I have a lot more to work on with my kick in general.
So then you concentrated in the lumber yard.
Well, I thought I would, but I was actually working in the office, and I was doing kind of cost accounting and looking for errors. And so I had they showed me little tricks to find if something is off. And I was just like forensically looking at things that didn't tie up and tick and tied.
It has stood us in very good stead all these years.
Yeah, I can look at numbers on balance sheets, not balance sheets, and P&Ls and proposals, and I look for exception. Uh-huh. And I say, whoa, why is this double anyone else's line in the capital expense? Who's running this business? And, I'm very kind of pecuniary about that, and I just dig in. But I was a terrible student. I mean, like, I'm ADD dyslexic, and I'm actually a chairman of the board. I mean, I've grown into that. I speak about being dyslexic. I have a T-shirt that's dyslexic, and it's spelled backwards and letters flipping around. So I had very little opportunity to achieve scholastically. It was slim to none, and I could dance, and I was in a dance group, and all women, the Women's Modern Dance Club, and I was an athlete. And I got a lot of shit for being in the women's dance club, but
probably worked for you at the time.
It worked for me. I'm happy. I said, do I have to really wear a leotard? And I'm afraid you do.
So what kind of dance was it?
Modern dance,
Okay.
Multigram. I wanted to be Fred Astaire. I wanted to be Gene Kelly. I wanted to... Ray Bolger was another great dancer, believe it or not, as odd as that may seem. And Mickey Rooney, guy could dance. A lot of people could dance.
As you can imagine, dancing is a big part of our relationship.
Is it?
Yeah, we had a couple of twirls the other morning. It was nice. We play a lot of music.
It's too bad we're not filming this. I tell you, I'd get you both up dancing.
I'm ready. But on the way back from this month experience in Eugene, Oregon, which was mind-blowing because it's another culture. I'd never been out of New York, Bronx, or Long Island. But this was exceptional. They didn't know who I was. I had very long hair, and it was early beat movement for me. And I'm probably 15, 16. But instead of going home, I made money, and I had to pay for my flight back. I went to Provincetown, which is another bastion of the beat world. And my sister was there for a summer. She was supposedly having a job as a waitress, but she met this Cuban sculptor and just fell madly in love, and as he did. And I flew and got to Provincetown, and they said, we can get you a place to stay. And it was in the dunes. There was a lot of sand, and it was a beautiful little cabin that was handmade by a woman named Sasha. And I hung out with the beatniks. I just was like their mascot. They would take me to the bar and say, come in the back room, we'll get you in. And I worked with Ernesto Jerez Gonzalez, who was an incredibly talented sculptor that came from Cuba. Had a great reputation. He did a big piece in the plaza. He showed me how to do direct welding. Mm-hmm. And it was like, oh my God, this is the best. Because it was an oxyacetylene torch and a brazing rod, and you sort of melted it, and sort of like you see these guys doing glass sometimes in the malls, and they're just pulling the glass and heating it. It's the same. Instead of using glass, you're using a bronze rod with flux on it. And I was making little birds, and mm-hmm. Ernesto would say, "It's incredible you're doing this already. I don't think I taught you that much." And mostly I was doing is making links. Little bronze links, and those links became part of chains. So there were these bronze, direct welded, kind of organically shaped links, which stood me in good stead. I mean, it was a living for me. I didn't have to wash cars, deliver newspapers in high school. I could make
longer.
I could make links, and it was like a revelation.
Were you selling them through a gallery at that point?
No, I was selling them in the cafeteria in 11th and 12th grade. Mm-hmm. My father said, if you can figure out how to. What happened was I kind of burnt part of the finished Knotty Pine basement and set it on fire. It wasn't a big fire. It was a lot of smoke. And he said, no, that's it. You got to go to the garage and work. And so I went out in the garage, and it was kind of cold sometimes. But he said, if you can sculpt a hand, because he knew that drawing a hand was a sign of you had artistic talent. So I sculpted the alphabet, and I figured I could do initials with that, and I could sell them. And it was like, I think $10. And if you want an initial, it was 2, so it was $20. And most people just, I just want a hand. Give me a B. Give me whatever it was. So I was doing initials. I was taking orders, and then I was called to the principal, and they said, you're soliciting, and that's you cannot solicit in the school. I said, I'm not soliciting, I'm selling. And my father came in, and he was a bit of a rebel himself. And he says, what's wrong with that? And Mr. Yurman, we'd like you to have your son cut his hair. It's a bit long. And he said, well, do you have a rule for soliciting in hair? I'd like to see it. And he said, well, we don't have anything for his hair being as long as, it looked like Jimi Hendrix. It was a hedge. It was sometimes known as a Jufro. And I said, I'm keeping it. And my father said, I don't see anything wrong with it. And meanwhile, he would say, you got to cut that hair. But faced against the authority, he would say, who do you think you are telling my son what to do? And I said, well, now I know where I got it. But
in the genes.
It's in the genes. So we're both rebels. And what was the word you used before?
Tearaway.
Tearaway, yes. We were terrorists. And it was perfect for me to move into this world. And there was Norman Mailer and Franz Klein and Gregory Corso and the writers, and it was just so exciting. So the book is really about living through that time. We were not famous. We were too young. We were not Basquiat. We didn't achieve fame, and we were just there, and we were just working.
And you then just began selling your sculptures through galleries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And craft fairs. There was sculptures, sculptural jewelry, belt buckles. I think by the age of probably 21, 22 years old, I had a buckle. I made buckles, and I sold them at craft fairs. And a friend of mine said, and they were originals. He said, why don't you cast them and make multiples? I'll set you up.
I remember that.
I said, really? I'll set you up, and then you make 12 buckles, and no matter what they look like, even the worst, keep it. You never know what the public likes. I said, oh, okay. So he set me up to do it and help finance a little bit of it, and I paid him back quite quickly. And I had a buckle business, and within a year or two, I had like a $3 million buckle business with distributors going all over the country. I had 3 distributors. And
I was working with him on that at that time.
Sybil got me to stop polishing the buckles, because that takes, you make them, and then they're molded and cast, and they deliver these raw buckles. And now you have to grind off the sprues and clean and, oxidize. And
I hired people. I didn't realize I was hiring ex-drug addicts or people from Al-Anon who needed jobs. And
they were incredible workers.
it was great.
Yeah, they all were on a commune in sort of upstate New York, and they would come and they were part of a Gurdjieff group where the hammer and the nail, you become the hammer, and you just focus on it. You find freedom in work and focus. So these guys were just, you'd have to pull them off the bench.
Where did you meet?
We met in Greenwich Village, actually in a studio. A sculptor, Hans van die Wouwenkamp, had a studio where David and 5 or 6 other sculptors worked, and David was the foreman. I had just left Martha's Vineyard. A friend said, "You cannot stay here. You'll end up with one of these musicians, so you have to leave." And she said, "Go take this job in New York." And I had an apartment in New York, so I went back to New York. I went for the interview. I met, the 6 sculptors. They were all working in a studio, and I walked through this area where they were. And when I got to the other end, I said to the woman,
You were oogled and Googled
By you.
and goggled. All the guys were like hanging over there, turned off their torches, and we're leaning over and said, "My God, this is really," she had giant share hair. It was just this abundance of black hair, and she had 2 ponchos. One was like a skirt, and one was a poncho. So she was this poncho tree and this giant head of hair, and she was taking really extra long steps, and I think she had black boots, red laces, and little bells.
God, you remember everything.
Oh man, you would have remembered that. It's like, what we looked at each other and we said, "What the hell is that?" It's really hot.
You made an impact, Sybil.
Oh my God.
I truly did. I remember putting two ponchos on, and I remember thinking, why am I doing that? Well, I feel like wearing them, and I don't know which one I want.
So did he make an impact on you?
Yes, he did. I liked the way he looked. He was very graceful, and he had a sensitivity about him. That was what I was interested in, and he had great blue eyes. So I said to my friend, it's David, is he married? And she said, no. And I said, is he with someone? And she said, no. And okay. Is he gay? And she said, no. And I said, oh, good.
Check, check, check.
I would make lunch for everyone every day, all the guys, so everyone would eat together, and we would all talk because they were all single guys. And this way, everyone had a great lunch. We got to talk about dating and what was going on in our lives. And I got to spend more time with David. And after, I think, 3 months, we started dating. We went on a date on my birthday for my 25th birthday. And we've been together ever since.
And in the book, David, you say that you learned something really important from Hans, the sculptor whose studio you were in, that he made you realize you can do art and run a business at the same time.
Yeah,
that's art related.
He was doing that. He had a business that we were working on, which was it was in the D&D building, it was a decorator building, and he made ornamental fountains that could be plugged in your living room and put little rocks around it, make a little ecosystem there. And there's a garden and these beautiful sounding dripping of water and from going into cups of copper and bronze, and they would age and become patinaed by themselves. And there were about 5 or 6 of styles.
We both worked. I had the job of handling all the billing and overseeing the shipping, where the men made the pieces and did all the crating of the sculptures, the fountains.
So you were both learning
Oh, yeah.
how
Yeah,
to run a business.
Mm-hmm.
But I worked for Jacques Lipschitz for almost 2 years. And I worked for Theodore Rozak, who's an incredibly fierce sculptor and very disciplined. Who I had known from watching TV as a kid when I was 15, 16 years old. He was on television, something called What in the World, and he would identify this object. And he was he was always right. And it was just wonderful seeing this little guy with a beret. It was a very thick accent and these erudite curators of museums just get it wrong. And he was, no, this is not possible. They didn't have this kind of paint in that period. This is bullshit. Oh, excuse me. So he was so clear about it. And then as I was working on making sculptural jewelry, I was at a foundry, and they said, "Do you would like to have a regular job? Just would you like?" Jacques Lipschitz is looking for an assistant, and so I worked for Lipschitz. And I learned that you have to be disciplined. You have to be focused. You have to put all the rest of the stuff aside. And they said you have to have your one main girlfriend. One, don't be bouncing around. Just focus on what you do, and everything opens up. If you try to jump all over, he said, you're very talented, and you're jumping, you do, I see what you do, because I made a deal with him. I'm bringing my torch, and I'd like to continue making my small sculptures. So, okay. So in the afternoon, after we came back from the diner up in Hastings on the Hudson, I'd work on my little sculptures. And he said, they are charming. They're very, very charming. But, I may have to get a commission when you sell this because you're making too much time here. So the 9 years I was apprenticing, I had my own studio, and Lipschitz had talked to a relative who had money. He said, you have to give him a stipend so he can go to school and he can do his own work for a year. And he'll tell you how much it is. And Lipschitz got an uncle to pony up. And I was able to go to school and learn some more traditional sculpture techniques and understand what art was about. And I just said, this is my life. And I couldn't have done it without Lipschitz insisting, teaching me how he lived his life.
But if Lipschitz said you should have concentrate on one thing, did he think it was okay for you to go between sculpting and jewelry?
He didn't know about the jewelry.
He didn't know about it. Okay.
No, and I was not a jeweler back then. I could do, these little links that Ernesto Gonzalez taught me how to make. I could sell as many as I could make almost to friends and friends of friends. So it would just get me through. And in the meantime, I was getting kind of a wage from Lipschitz or from Rozak. It was, like $150 a week.
And so at what point did the jewelry begin to take over from the sculptures?
I think it probably was around when we started making buckles and doing multiples, and then figuring out how we could craft, so using the word craft, an organization around that. And Sybil was, I couldn't ship the right pieces in the right boxes going to the wrong addresses. I'm dyslexic, and it just was so difficult. And she said, I'll do that for you. I'll come in. And she was going to school, and she was painting at the same time. She said, I'll take care of that. And then I wasn't coming to bed until like 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, because I was working to fulfill these orders. And she said, we got to get some help. And so she hired these Gurdjieff people to come in and work their little fingers off. And before I knew it, I was going to, because I had the belt buckles and I had I took the belt buckles and sculptural jewelry, which I also started to cast. And and the buckles were sculpture. There was an angel buckle, there was these curious figures, and then there were some buckles. There was like angel. I did a lot of angels. And then I started doing these sort of like concho oval shape buckles with stones in the middle, kind of Southwest feeling. And I went to the National Boutique Show, and those shows were crazy. The pot at the McAlpin Hotel, just walk down the hall. By the time you get to your stand, you were like stoned. It was wild. Just crazy stuff. But the atmosphere of being it was a grand bazaar held in various hotels, national fashion and boutique show. And you start developing relationships. And one guy saw what I was doing and said, I have like 5 stores in Colorado and Wyoming, and these are really, could you do more? And blah, 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 blah. Next thing I know,
those stores were craft galleries. So at that time, we only sold to craft shops or craft galleries,
boutiques,
or galleries. It wasn't mainstream.
No.
And then you moved on to the department stores.
Yes.
We were invited.
And that, Sybil, I thought was quite interesting in the book, the way that from the word go, you kind of decided to do everything differently. You insisted on logos being displayed and certificates of authenticity, and you had special packaging. And it was something that people just didn't do then.
No. In fact, not only the larger establishments, Bloomingdale's, Neiman Saks, Nordstrom, etc., Bergdorf's, they were not using the name in the showcase. And the better jeweler in all the towns in America, they would just show the collections. And they tend to show them by a commoditized way of looking at them. Here's your gold, here's your diamond, here's your emerald, ruby, sapphire. Your silver is in the back of the store. So I had silver, gold jewelry. So
and rings was shown. The rings were shown.
It's categorized.
In a ring category.
Well, not
Earrings
really.
was shown in another case very often, is what they did.
So we, from the craft world, it's our name. I'm the crafts person that did it, that created and worked it and whatnot. And that ethos carried through. And that was part of at the same time, this is the great American craft movement, which was probably from early 60s all the way through to 81, 82. I looked it up on Google to see if is there something called American Craft Movement. And there is, and those are the dates. And it was, Dale Chihuly was part of that, and Wendell Castle with furniture, and Albert Paley. These are very established artists' craft, and the art craft world was merging.
And you had to go before a screening committee to be able to join the American Craft
These are all
Council.
juried. We had attended juried, and we did it for 9. I apprenticed for 9 years. We did the craft world for 9 years, and that we did together.
Jewelry.
And so I was selling buckles, sculptural jewelry, and then as that's 9 years, so styles changed. And we were wholesaling and retailing at these fairs.
So it's really hard work, really hard work.
Oh, load. Everyone was in the craft world. They're loading up their VW buses. We're still in New York City, and so we're loading up our 1962 Caddy Brome, and we knocked out the back seats, and so we could put all our equipment there and put roof racks on, and we built. We would build our stand. And it was, and funny, we made our stand so our jewelry was in frames, like you would frame a piece of art. So we built the walls and the jewelry on these black or gray velvet, and we would pin our sculptural jewelry, and we'd sell. So we really understood how to deal with customers. We also understood the language that their language about our work. What they liked or didn't like. So we had a great selling experience for 9 years. You talk about, 10,000 hours? Well, we had 100,000 hours to get to where we were. We worked it, we packed it up the night before, we refilled the orders, we did wholesale, retail. It was a great experience. I mean, So when we did finally were invited to come and do it's called the RJA show, which is America's Retail Jewelers. They went to this craft fair and they said, there's some interesting things being done here. We should bring them in. And so they brought us in, and 10 other, paid for our spaces, and we built our shops, and we were selling the mainstream. I mean, there's some crazy stories. There's one story of Sybil where Saks came by. One dotty old lady with her glasses with powder on, and this very sophisticated, chief of merchandising. She came with her. Sybil looked at them, and I was standing by, and she said, "Saks, are you allowed to use that name?" She said, "What do you mean?" "Well, it's spelled the same way as like Saks Fifth Avenue, but it just says Saks." She said, "Well, we are Saks Fifth Avenue." And I could just see her saying, "I mean, the dotty old lady with the powder on your glasses, you're actually us." She said, "Well, I'm the buyer of Saks Fifth Avenue." She said, "Well, in that case, can I just take your glasses for a moment and just wipe them?"
I wiped her glasses.
She wiped her glasses off.
Wiped her glasses.
She said, "Now you could see the jewelry better."
Did you get the order after that?
We did.
Oh, yeah.
We got a big order. That was our first time on the main floor. We spent a couple of years up in the boonies.
But the second order she had somebody make copies of at a lesser price.
Oh, yeah. They were famous for that.
Took our work and cut it up and sent it back and said, "Oh, it came broken." And
What?
she basically was putting us out of business to get a better price. And it was really quite something. So it taught us an incredible amount about dealing with big businesses. It wasn't about a craft fair. So you really had to have contracts and criterias. And David and I would work putting together authorized retailers, what they could, agreements.
We never sold it. After that, we never sold anyone without a authorized agreement contract.
But that's kind of fraudulent. Did you deal with Saks again?
Not for 10, actually not for 10 years. We didn't deal with them.
She would sometimes, we had a very small studio on 48th Street, and sometimes she would be knocking on the door, and she pretty much walked across the street because we were in the same, a block away, and she said, "I know you're in there. I know you're in there."
We wouldn't let them
I want you, what colors are you doing we were doing a lot of beaded work, bead and pearl. And she said, well, what colors are you doing for the season? And I said, wouldn't you like to know? Get away. We're never selling you.
And it wasn't until Bert Tansky became the chairman of Saks Fifth Avenue, and he had left, I think, Bergdorf, and he was at Saks, and he came and besieged us to do this.
Right.
And
we were making cable bracelets
we
then.
said we would sell one store, and he said, "No, you'll sell 5." And we was like, "Absolutely not."
I said, "No way.
We'll sell one store, and you have to pay for it up front." And he was like, "Are you guys crazy? What's wrong with you?" And we were just very, very direct with him. So
the best thing is that, the situation is that the store has the power because they have the money. They think they can make you or break you.
Bert Tansky said that to us when we didn't want to sell him.
He said, "We're going to make or break you."
He said, "You don't understand. I could make you."
It's kind of brutal.
Oh yeah. This is war. They go to war rooms. I don't know how he knew that we were doing very well selling these cable bracelets, and the only store was Neiman's as far as the specialty stores. We sold to a lot of substantial jewelry stores, and still selling the craft shops. And he knew these things were selling. He'd see them at parties and and he wanted in on the action. And I said, we just had really bad experiences. So we did sell 2, and we did well, and then we sold
17 or whatever.
Yeah.
But he's become a friend to this day.
Yeah.
Actually.
He's difficult to deal with, and you know what? I said, we know your reputation. You're tough, but I'll put my wife up against you any day. He said,
I think
why?
I would too.
He said, why? Because she's from the Bronx. You know she's from the Bronx.
He grew up on the same street 2 houses away from me until he was, maybe only 2 years old.
That's funny. But you said you were selling the cable at that point, and
Yes.
I want you to tell me about that, because as you say in the book, the cable is the river that runs through everything we do.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
How did you come up with that, David?
Well, actually, I was doing I was doing pearls, I was doing cable, I found the mesh material, which was incredibly beautiful. And one of the retailers, a really astute retailer, came by at one of the shows, and she looked into our showcases, and she says, "I don't know who you are. You have like 4 different, you had bead and pearls. Beautiful rubelite beads and pearls, very rich and whatnot. And I don't know what to buy here. It's all so beautiful. I don't see, what are you? Who are you?" I said, "What are you talking about? You've known me for like 7 years. You buy my work." "Yeah, this is different now. Now you're in the big leagues. You got to decide. So I'm going to pass." I said, "Shit." She had 9 beautiful stores. I went, "Oh God."
And I thought God sent her to us because I was of the mind that David really needed to focus on what he was doing.
So we took it seriously. I said, there's a big message here. And we went off, I think we were in Fire Island, and we also had a very astute friend who was from Harvard, and he's an artist, and he was somehow doing their fundraising. But anyway, he said, "You really have to understand what you represent. And you have these 5 different looks. Pick one." I said, "How about 3? Hoping that we get 2. He said, "No, pick one." And the decision, I thought the mesh was the most beautiful. And we could do a lot of things with this beautiful mesh. And it was very unique. And there was only 2 machines that we knew that made this mesh, and no one else could do this. So we'd really have a lock. And Sybil said, I kind of like the cable. I think we can go with the cable, that the helix, a twist, and there's so many different things. And we could pick up from the Minoans and the Greeks, and, you love that. And I said, I know, but...
We both had quite an education, both of us, in architecture and art and in history as well.
So our friend Peter, Sybil didn't want to mention his name because no one knows Peter anyways. Peter Fabre. So Peter and his wife was one of the auctioneers in Christie's. And so Peter said, let's pick one. And he said, I don't care which one you pick. And so we did. I thought we were in between the mesh and the cable. And I was going to say, wouldn't you know that there was a triple tornado that ripped through Rhode Island, where these 2 machines were in the Fulford Moore building from 1893 and buried them under rubble.
Oh, my God.
And the machines were from the late 1800s, which was really interesting.
Well, 1920s.
And they're on that was the particular product he's talking about is on the back cover of the book. I wanted to show it, so it's on the back cover. Oh, yeah, it's right there.
It isn't, but
Venetian.
you could Venetian, but
cable.
Venetian was a way of making it look like the mesh, but it was really cable. And I textured, I'm very technical about that. I get into the machinery and how it's made. And I mean, we make cable, probably 120 different kinds of cable. We make cable that's flexible, that's twice as thin as anyone else's cable, and about 50% harder. So we're into the alchemy of metal and using machines. And I have a group of Italian geniuses in New Jersey that make all our cable.
And so you decided at that point, when you had to make this choice about what you focused on, and
God made the choice. The hurricanes and these tornadoes made the choice.
Maybe that was Sybil kind of doing a rain dance outside.
It was.
I had that thought.
It was. I was so for it.
And then I had made this before the machine fell out and we couldn't make mesh. I made this. I still wear the bracelet. It's simple wire, slightly twisted, very slight twist to it.
Is that the first cable you made on your wrist?
Yeah, it really is. It's and I made it, and I belong to a group of guys that we go riding, horseback riding in the wilderness. We're 43 years now. But this is early on, and they said, whoa, that's a nice bracelet. Why don't you make that for everyone on the ride? I said, there are 18 guys on this ride, and I don't think I'm really want to do. But what I will do, I'll give it for an award. And there is an award that's given.
For the best dressed cowboy.
I said, I'm going to give it to the best dressed cowboy because you guys are really fucking ragged. I mean, you could really dress up. So Wednesday is dress up, and here's the bracelet, silver and 18 karat gold for best dressed on the ride. And I gave out about 12 of them. One ride I said, okay, David, my name's Dusty. Dusty, where is it? I said, as a matter of fact, no one gets it. You guys, it didn't make the standard. I'm sorry. What? This 10-gallon 19 beaver hat, it doesn't make it? I said, nah, didn't work with the vest. It was clashing.
So you came up with this design that basically you started a whole new thought process behind jewelry that was bridging fashion and fine. And so it was new. It was new for department stores. They didn't know how to cope with it, really, because it didn't fit anywhere.
Right.
No, in fact, that they didn't. It was silver. It was gold. And sometimes, at one point, we invented this idea of putting diamonds into silver jewelry. Mm-hmm. And
that was later. But they had to create, I wanted to reiterate this, is what David was talking about when he first did this. They didn't have a department or a way to bill for it. So they had to create a department and give us a new number. That was in the splitting of cable into 2 areas where Silver Ice was so much business. In order to track it, you need to give it a business number in the department stores. But even before that, that's what I was saying
before that, they didn't know how to take in this jewelry that was both silver and gold and gemstones, semi-precious, whatever they called it back then. It was a category of, and the insistence to sign an agreement that you can only show it if we agree to show it in those locations. And show it in a way that we felt was appropriate, and put it in a place that we felt comfortable with and approved. And it was named. It had a name to it, David Yurman.
But when you did the diamonds in silver, everyone thought you were crazy.
Yeah, they'll fall out. No, we did the Vicar test, and we knocked them around, and we sent them out to be worn for 6 months before, and they just hold up just fine. And we also made a different alloy. We put a % of platinum into the silver mix and made it a little bit harder.
Did you set out, both of you, to create a whole new look in jewellery? Did you think
Yes.
that there's a new genre here
Yes.
to be done in jewellery?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't set out for the business to be this size, this scale, but I definitely wanted us to be able to take a simple form like cable and to extend it as far as we could. So it could have a feeling of the Renaissance. It could have the feeling of a Deco period. It could have a feeling where there was elements of Nouveau. There was so many things that we could do with it. Kind of difficult to look at architecturally super modern, but we were able to do that in a group we called Pure Form. And the hypothesis was, here's cable. How many different ways can we dress it up? How many different ways can we change it? Can we do it in titanium? Can we use, instead of embedding onyx, can we use forged carbon? How do we play with materials? Our son was amazing what he played with in the men's collection, which I think is brilliant. I can say that because it's Evan's collection. And he totally does it on his own. I have just a brief pass. But they used forged carbon. They used a meteorite, and then they use forged meteorite with little bits of meteorite from the working. He would put it in with a mix of platinum and gold and fuse it together so it has this wonderful mosaic look to it. But using a meteorite it's from outer space, and putting it next to a dinosaur bone sliver. So you have this black, shiny, beautifully textured, silvery black, and you had this red and green, bubbly material next to it, which is a dinosaur bone and meteorite. So this is crazy. I love it.
But the other thing you disrupted was the way that the advertising image.
Yes.
Because back in the day, I used to sit there and I never understood why brands showed their jewellery on women who were living a life that no one lived. And they just looked like a cross between they were going to Ascot races and a ball and something else. It was like nobody lives this life. And your imagery was black and white.
Yes.
Peter Lindbergh, soft. They looked like real women, just on a walk, doing something normal, in a sweater with a lovely piece of jewellery. Just one piece, not sort of dolled up. And I thought, why doesn't everyone do this? But it was very groundbreaking, those
Well,
Yes.
the groundbreaking part, I'm going to let Sybil take this because she was in the thick of it. That was her world, is that was the kind of jewelry, we were making jewelry for day. And sometimes it was day to night. You could carry it through because the ring that you're wearing, that black looks like black from here. We could pave that, and it could sit in silver, and it could be affordable. For me, that was home run. That you could wear a diamond ring, and it was fun. It was just fun because the price allowed it to be.
So, Sybil, was that you working with Peter Lindbergh that came up
David.
with that idea?
Yeah, I work with David Lippman and Peter. But the David Lippman, we went to him because we wanted to do advertising, and the advertising we were doing is actually we show it in the book. They're boxes, and in the box they're painted boxes that were built, and then in them is product. David Lippman brought in Peter Lindbergh, but we had gone to David through Condé Nast. Tom Florio and Ron Galati had recommended using him, that he was very good at what he did. And he was kind of a newcomer on the scene also. So we met with him, and he said, after he really thought about it, and he said, I don't have any ideas that are different than what you're doing on jewelry. And he was working on Burberry at the time with Bruce Weber. He came to our house. We have a house in East Hampton, we live in a Japanese house, and the soji screens and the oil floors kind of thing. And he came just as I was coming out of the pool, and I was wrapped in a sarong, and I had jewelry on me, which I would wear in the water. And he looked at me, and my hair was all wild, and he looked at me and he said, I didn't have any ideas. I was coming to tell you I couldn't do the campaign, but I just realized you're the idea. So I know what we have to do, and I'll do the campaign for you, but it'll take me a while to strategize it and put it all together. So he brought in women that he felt emulated the feeling of how we approached jewelry and how I wore it and who it was really made for. So it was Amber Valletta, and she represented one type of gal, and eating a watermelon, doing something, having some corn, whatever it was, she was different things. And then Kate Moss, who was more like myself, who was cheeky and playful and smart. This was about lifestyle and the ease and comfort. So the first shoots were family scenes, and on the table was a container of milk for the children, and there was a bottle of Chateau de Rothschild. It was about a family. That's who David loved designing for, and he really liked the interchanges with the individuals. So we weren't dealing with...
The movie stars?
The movie stars were buying from us. They were buying from us. So
they were, but
David did things for...
gifting.
Yeah.
But they were beautiful, really beautiful, and so sort of casual and relaxed and beautiful.
Right.
They were amazing. I wanted to know how you work together as artists in the same space. How does it work? You're at the kitchen table. Are you fighting for space? Are you collaborating? Are you showing each other what you're working on at that moment?
All of those things occur at different times depending on our mood and how cranky one of us is.
She's speaking of me in code, by the way.
Like every wife.
She's very seldom cranky. I'm very often cranky. I just feel that, that my breakfast is a private moment.
No, but I want to know about your art, not your breakfast. Tell me about your art.
So working together, David always says, like David draws all the time. There's hundreds and thousands of drawings. If you come to America and I'd love to have you come to our offices where there's a room with, I think 6 locked doors, and behind those are all drawings.
Okay.
We both draw. He does drawings, and then he shows them to me, and I'll say, gee, I love this. I see what you're thinking about here, but I don't see how we can make it. What's the idea behind it? And he'll tell me, and we'll talk about it. And then I will merchandise what he's looking at, what he's drawn, because there's so many things to choose from that anything is a fair game. So someone said to me yesterday, Sybil, the whole crew that you worked with, David Lippman and Peter Lindbergh, everybody, they said you were able to take thought and feeling and put it into words so they could translate it for you into a visual experience. And that was the objective. So when I look at a piece of jewelry, David will say, what do you think? And he wants me to edit it and to address what it is I'm looking at. And does it fit the criteria for the overall look and feel of what we do, the brand, as it's called, the brand or the collections. So that's what I do.
And do you think it's possible for anyone today to start designing jewelry and create a brand like yours? Do you think that we live in such a different world now that anybody could not build it organically like you have?
I don't know why not. One of the ideas behind doing the book was to give young people the faith to take a chance. I gave a talk recently, and they wanted to have me talk about branding and marketing, and it was like, wait, everyone, please, will people please raise their hand who think they have something to market, that they have something that's a great idea that they'd really like to put their life behind? And no one raised their hand. So, okay, there's a difference. So there's a different subject we're going to talk about, and that's going to be about pursuing what your river that runs through you that you're not giving the respect, because you wouldn't have come to this talk if you didn't have an inkling that there was something that was touching you. So the objective for the book, for me, a good part of it is to encourage people to pursue what touches them.
I think what came across to me for young people is this, the art and commerce, that they should know about business. They have to have the skill. They have to have a skill.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that they have to work unbelievably hard, like day and night.
Yes.
I mean, it does take you over to a certain extent, but it's not that you're prisoner to it. It's that you get joy from it. So it's like we're in our early 80s, and I, with the exception of issue with a knee or whatever, I'm pretty active. My brain is working more. It's a little more structured. I keep a log. I read my log and to get me back on track to what I'm thinking about design or even just emotional. Just because it is an emotional thing. It's a feeling thing that jewelry is about. It's a collaborative thing. How do I get this message across to the people that I'm working with? How do I get them to buy into it and understand what I'm thinking about? I just don't show geometrics and say, okay, make this. I can do schematic drawings, but it's really why I'm thinking of this. What's the emotion behind it? What did Sybil and I kind of get to by merging these two dissimilar collections over the last 45 years? We think these two things should come together. We should meld them together. Can you see what we're talking about? What would you do to extend it? Before it was my way or the highway because I was a sculptor. I worked, it's my solitary moment and I had people do my bidding. It changed within 25 years. It's like I had to express what I wanted and have at least one or two, mostly Sybil, because Sybil was the editor of the collection. David is a great idea, but not now. What do you mean not now?
So you think you really, without that partnership, the David Yurman brand wouldn't have worked? You needed the partnership.
I think for me, that's the main message. Do I care if someone picks up on what we wrote and says, I can do that, and they go off and they become wealthy, famous? I don't care about that. I care that the message is, don't think that you can do everything yourself, and think how wonderful it is and how dynamic it is and how difficult to do it in cooperation and to listen to someone else's point of view and don't give up yours, and that something else comes out of it. And in a certain way, you don't become the owner. You become one of the owners of a collaborative concept. And it's,
That was a love note.
No, it's very difficult. I mean, I didn't learn that until
Last week.
Last week.
Breakfast.
Breakfast.
Sybil, does he give you jewelry?
Do I give you jewelry?
On occasion, yes. On occasion.
And what do you wear every day?
I wear the same jewelry every day.
Which is?
For about a year
I wear this bracelet, which is a flexible sculpted cable bracelet that's very soft and sensuous and easy to wear, and also becomes a necklace. And I tend to wear this ring, which is like a thimble ring. It's almost like a cigar band.
Obviously have very comfortable pieces. They look comfortable.
Yeah, it's really comfy.
Yeah, it's one of the elements.
Yeah, it's very, very comfortable.
We have to check that off. If it's not comfortable, it doesn't make the line.
No wedding ring?
No.
No,
he never gave me he gave me a wedding ring.
I did.
He did.
Well,
we got married. We decided after a while to get married, and it was like, oh, today's the last day we can do it, because you had to have blood tests then. So we woke up and I said, I guess it's either we do it or we just never do it. It's because I'm never having my blood drawn again. Little did I know what would happen as I got older. You have to have the blood drawn all the time. So then what happened was we said, okay, we'll get married. We called and they said, okay, we can marry you tomorrow. And so I called my folks and they said, oh, sure. And we called some artist friends and we all went together. We were going to get married. And I said to David, we were at the elevator. We left work at 11 o'clock and we left to go get married. And I said, do you have the rings? And he said, no. Do you? And I said, no. And he went, oh my God. Okay. And he ran back inside and he quickly made two wedding rings, one with just one wrap of gold and one with 2 wraps of gold. And he wears the 2 wraps of gold. And someone took my ring years and years ago, and I never replaced it. But I do wear various rings as kind of a wedding ring, but none of them were my wedding, or they weren't given to me as wedding rings, so I never wear one.
Well, I think he can knock you up another one. I think you better knock her up another one.
He has one on. But
really, I urge anyone to buy and read this book because it is fascinating about 2 creative lives together. This is not just a jewelry book. It is so much else, and it's really, really fascinating about both your mediums that you work in. And thank you so much for taking time to talk about your lives with us. Thank you so much, Sybil and David.
we look forward to meeting you.
Yes, I'm going to come. I'm going to take up that invitation when I come to New York.
Please.
And you can, and then I'll take up another invitation when you're in London.
Yes.
Very good.
Yes.
Take care, dear.
Ciao.
Nice meeting you.
Bye, and you. Thank you for listening. For this and other episodes of If Jewels Could Talk, please go to our website, carolwoolton.com/podcasts, and share it any way you can. And as Christmas is coming, do give us a comment, rating, or a star. Thank you for listening this year and for organically growing the If Jewels Could Talk community. I know it's because you're listening, you're sharing, and you're talking to other people. And that's the best way for us to grow. We had some great results back from Spotify the other day showing how it was, our graph of listeners is just rising and rising. And interestingly, the favorite episode, according to Spotify, is The Genius of René Lalique and Art Nouveau. So if you haven't listened to that one yet, do go back into our back catalogue and find it, because obviously loads of other people have enjoyed it. And it comes highly recommended. And don't forget, the If Jewels Could Talk book is out on Amazon, good bookstores. If you're looking for a Christmas gift or a birthday gift, it makes a great present. There's something in it for everyone, from Queen Cleopatra to Rihanna, from King Charles I to Harry Styles. And all the topics that we talk about on the podcast are included. And join me again in 2 weeks for the next Jeweled Nugget, when in fact we'll have a special episode that was recorded in New York at a book launch given to me by Vidura. So we have a live audience there, and we talk about the book and jewelry and Vidura and Elizabeth Taylor, of course. We never leave her out. So join me then. And in the meantime, wishing you all happy holidays. Thank you for listening and joining me, and see you soon. Bye-bye. If Jewels Could Talk with Carol Woolton is produced by Natasha Cowan, music and editing by Tim Thornton, graphics by Scott Bentley, illustration by Jordi Labanda. You can find our sponsors at fullygemstones.com and me at carolwoolton.com.